Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody that I've actually known a very long time. We played a few jobs together back in the dark ages of Orange County, Dixieland, and he's spent a good portion of 31 years as the conductor of the Disneyland Band. So I'm sure you've seen him, especially if you're a Southern California person. Here he is, my friend Art Dragon. Hello, Art.
Well, hi, Dan. How are you?
It hurts when I do this.
Well, don't
I'm
do it.
Pretty good. Thank you for sending me the bio information. I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to try to research you online. And it's interesting, I really thank you for sending that to me because as you were saying, your digital footprint is probably about the size of Tom Liston's, and you're right about that. But the other thing that I found a little bit amusing is trying to research Art Dragon. You get a lot of art of dragons.
Yes.
And then you get a lot about Carmen or Daryl Dragon. Of course, other two famous musicians with dragon in their name. And so it was good. I'm glad that you sent it to me, or else I would have been a babe in the woods during our interview. So let's start at the beginning. Art, where were you born?
Hadley, Massachusetts. And that's a small little town along the Connecticut River in they call it Western Massachusetts there. It's right between Northampton and Amherst. And that town was kind of interesting because we had 5 major schools in that area. One was Amherst College, one was Smith College, one was Mount Holyoke College, then the University of Massachusetts, and then one called Hampshire College,
okay,
which was more of an expensive school. So I grew up in a rural town. Basically, what you did for part-time work was farm work.
Sure, but even before that, you went to the Hopkins Academy Elementary School, right?
Well, no, that was
your high school.
That was a high school, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you kind of started playing, wasn't it?
Sure. One day, actually in second grade, the band leader of the town, musician, of the school, came around and he talked to us about instruments. And I went home to my mom and I said, I think I want to play trombone, but what does that look like? So So we looked it up in the Sears, true story, looked it up in the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Oh, yeah.
And she says, maybe you ought to play trumpet. That's cheaper. So then later, when the time came in about 5th or 6th grade, I started playing the trombone then. So, and it was a typical thing where you'd play once in a while. We didn't have full music classes every day, but once a week. And I played through high school. And in high school, I kind of went from trombone to baritone horn, then to tuba, because we didn't have a tuba. And I enjoyed that a lot. That's how I started doubling. And in high school, I wasn't an avid practicer. That was never something I really liked to do, but I loved to play. And my stepfather was a very good amateur musician that played in some of the local town bands. So he'd bring me along and I'd play in these bands. And like my last 2 years of high school, I played in 2 orchestras in the area, one a college orchestra and one just a regional orchestra. And so I got a lot of experience that way. It was a lot of fun. It was all on the legitimate, the classical side of music.
It's interesting, a lot of, especially non-musician fans we have, don't understand practicing as a low brass player, especially as a tuba player, because you sort of, what do you do other than, we know technically, as now about long tones and scales and arpeggios and things. But as a kid, you think, what am I going to play? You know, oomp, 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 oomp. What kind of inspiration do you get to practice? And same with trombone, even and baritone, your parts are so there's such pads in those age groups. You know, you're playing either whole notes or punches.
Yeah.
And practicing just seems silly as a kid. You just sort of go.
Yeah, well, I think I just didn't like to be alone. You know, I like to be around other people. But whatever it was, I didn't practice that much. I practiced later on when I got to be my late 20s and 30s. I practice all the time now. I love to practice, so I'm making up for it.
Yeah, I just had a chance. You may know Chet Yeager.
Sure.
He's 96 years old now, and he still puts in an hour a day.
Yeager.
Yeah, I know. With my luck, he's probably still doing push-ups and running track too. But you know.
Wow! Wow!
It's amazing. So yeah, I was. In fact, as I looked through the information you sent me, you started out a college at Holy Cross, right?
Correct.
You were a chemistry major?
Yep. I had a full scholarship in chemistry, and decided pretty soon that wasn't the way I wanted to go. So I left, and banged around for a while, and ended up going to Boston University and being able to kind of stay in school at that point. And I was a classical trombone player major.
When did you get introduced to jazz?
Well, that's a good question. My father's family, my grandmother was a musician, and she started off as a theater organist and silent movie piano player, and in WPA times conducted a WPA orchestra, and had a full career. She retired when she was 75. She was on the faculty of Smith College at that time. So jazz wasn't a big deal in my family. My dad liked Leonard Panario, and my mother loved anything that had any Irish song. So, but my mother was working as an assistant comptroller at the university, and one of the students that worked for her needed to store her boyfriend's jazz collection, or record collection. So they brought it over and put it in front of the record player, and it was all like Blue Note stuff, 50s, 60s. No, it wasn't even 60s yet. Blue Note stuff, all small group stuff. So I started listening to that a lot. That really got me going.
Wow. How did it go over in the household?
It was fine. There was no problem there. My dad was a marine engineer, so he was away most of the time anyways, but.
I understand. Now, while you were at Holy Cross, though, they didn't have a music program there then.
No, they don't. I don't think they ever did. They were well known for there was a fellow by the name of Fred Merliani, who was a choral director, and they had an excellent men's chorus choir. I sang in one of them, and that's the first time I ever got kind of hip to reading music, singing, and learned to sit next to a guy that really knew what he was doing. And then I could follow along pretty well.
Wow, that's wonderful. Unfortunately, a lot of our fellow instrumental musicians don't have the opportunity to learn how to cold sing, and it's really valuable as an instrumentalist. Of course, you know that. And you spent some time at UMass too.
Yes. Basically, my first 3 semesters of colleges, I flunked out. And I was able to get in Boston University fine. But that was a kind of an albatross that hung around my head. And there was a good little jazz band at that school, a student-led band. And I had experience in some small group playing when I was in early college and late high school.
Yeah, that's kind of. I saw in your resume that when you turned 21, you got a gig at Your Father's Mustache.
Right.
And actually, that club, which I guess was nationwide,
international.
Yeah, yeah. That a lot of the people that I've interviewed actually got their starts at Your Father's Mustache at one place or another. So
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty common. It was a very interesting mix of some just flat out amateur players, like, mostly banjo players that want to have a good time, and then other guys that became, really respectable musicians, working musicians.
well, that's kind of where we all kind of start. You also mentioned that Chuck Stewart was the tuba player at the time.
Yeah,
And the name in the town, I guess.
yeah. No, I think he was an engineer that worked nights. He just worked all the time. And he could literally fall asleep on the tuba.
I've done that before, but it wasn't a good thing.
Oh, it's not pretty, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for a long time, when I was playing with Brian Shaw, I was very apneic, and I literally fell asleep on stage once. He likes to tell that story if you ever get a hold of Brian. But
I'm sure he didn't let you forget that either.
oh, to this day. And so it said you were playing 2 nights a week at Your Father's Mustache, is that right?
Correct.
And then just picking up casuals whenever you could.
Well, basically, I didn't do much outside of that at that point in Boston. But they, being an international chain, they had clubs in New York, Chicago, St. Louis, Philadelphia, and they would oftentimes need somebody on a weekend. So one semester, the best semester, I was going to school full time. My best semester, I didn't spend one weekend in Boston until after Thanksgiving. From like the beginning of September, it was a ball. I spent that semester. I spent the first 2 weeks in Philadelphia playing in the club there. So I mean, I like to play.
That's a wonderful thing. And then you led your own band at the Sticky Wicket.
Yeah, I brought that up because I saw the Eli Neuberger interview, and on Sundays, and the guy there loved Your Father's Mustache, so we wanted to try it. We did it with a trio, and but they would always talk about this band that came in on Sundays, that everybody would sit on the floor and they play songs that nobody knew, and everybody was quiet, and it was that band, and I was fast. What's that all about? And I never got to see them, but I eventually saw that band perform. And with Eli, what I was knocked out about, he would do something with like finger cymbals. He had a way of doing that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, Eli's dog was a great interview. If you saw the beginning of that interview.
Oh, his dog?
Yeah. His dog sat on his lap for the first, I think, 3 minutes of the interview, and you could barely see him. But no, yeah. Have you seen the video clips of Eli playing piano with one hand and tuba with the other?
No.
Yeah,
no.
He actually is a very talented piano player also, and he plays a duet with himself. I can't remember the tune right offhand, but it's interesting. Nice guy, fun interview.
Yeah.
New Black Eagle is. I actually like Tony Pringle's cornet playing with that band.
Yeah.
It's a very raw style, but then again, that's what you have. But I also see. Let's see, what were you talking about here? You said when you were in New Jersey, Ronnie Bill and Joe Tartle.
Yeah. Well, Ronnie Bill was a banjo player, a wonderful banjo player, easily one of the best I've ever played with. But maybe about 5 people in that category. And Joe Tartle was an old New York musician that during the Depression had so much work, he hired a driver to get him around. He did work with a band called Vincent Lopez. I don't know really what that was. He also worked at the Roseland Ballroom, and he had a radio show that he was doing. And later on, he ended up doing a lot of writing, and all the Paul LaValle thing, Band of America stuff that has Paul's name on it was Joe's writing. Oh. And he was a sweet, sweet guy. So always like to mention him.
Well, no, that's wonderful. Although I do have an inordinate amount of tuba players and low brass players on this interview show, which I think is kind of interesting because very seldom do we as tuba players have a chance to play with each other. I brought that up a couple times.
Right. Yeah.
So the fact that I've managed to form some friendships with people like John Van Houten and Les Benedict and Charlie Warren, and it's just, of course, it has to do with the fact that I started out on trumpet, but it's really nice. It's kind of a brotherhood. Eli, in fact, brought that up. That we tuba players tend to be a brotherhood.
I agree.
Just schlepping this stuff around. This
Yeah.
is, you also listed ASU, LA City College, and Dominguez Hills in your resume.
Well, you did do some research because I didn't mention those, but I got to Dave Gannett, who was a friend of mine.
Dave.
Got me to go to Arizona to work at a club there, a restaurant, and so I would take some classes at ASU at that time, playing the big band and stuff like that. It ended up where that club folded, and I had just bought a house, and the day I signed the papers on the house, we went. The club didn't fold. I'm sorry. They fired the band. So I spent a good amount of time totally scuffling, which was, what you do. And then that kind of connected me to Disneyland again. I'd gone out there earlier to open up this class of 27 show. My timeline's a little convoluted there.
Okay.
And that was on tuba.
Right.
It was Banu Gibson was in there. That and I forget who else really.
It's interesting that you mentioned Banu because her interview is showing this coming Wednesday.
Oh, good. Well, say hello to her.
Well, I will.
But there was a show. I had subbed for the Sonny Helmer in Miami Beach. It was a show they had done down there. That's where Palafian came in. He played on that show, and I met him there. And I met him, played with him later on a fair amount. And so it's kind of ironic. Sonny couldn't find a tuba player that understood conceptually what was going on, which is neither good or bad. Maybe it's bad. And so he flew me out. He paid for me to come out, and that was good. Disney bought the show, and they offered me a job. And I thought, well, I really don't want to go out and go cross country to work in a theme park. I'm the heck with that. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I had plenty of work back in Boston. So anyways, I ended up in Arizona, started calling around. A fellow by the name of Bill White, who was a tuba player there. He used to be up in Orange County. And he says, why don't you call Sonny Anderson, who was the big booker? There's an opening in the Pearly Band. So I did. And long story short, I got that job. And Eddie Davis was part of that because he kind of got me playing with those guys on a break one time. So they saw, well, I could play. So that all helped. So
was that kind of the start of your first introduction to the Disneyland?
Yeah, my first introduction was coming out to do that class of 27 show. That was at the Golden Horseshoe.
And that was with Bob Raggio, right?
Yes, yes. Bob was terrific.
Oh, yeah.
And what I would do, I knew a lot of songs, but kind of sing-alongs and things like that. And all of a sudden I was thrust into this area where there were a lot more, like, for example, the original Dixieland one-step. And I'd call Bob. We were living close to each other. And I'd say, hey, Bob, I'm looking for the song. He says, well, come on down. And I get down there, and he'd picked out 5 different versions of it. So we'd listen to it, and I'd kind of decide how I kind of wanted to play my trombone part from that. Picking a little bit from I stole from everybody. That's
we all do.
Oh yeah, but so Bob was so much fun that way.
I met Bob when he was with when he was at South Frisco, rather.
Yeah.
Just a really nice man.
Oh, he was wonderful. Yeah. He was really kind. He was a character.
So you left for a while, and then you ended up. How did you end up back at Disney again?
Well, I worked in the Pearly Band for 5 years. During that time,
Was that Jackie Kuhn was with them then?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was that was a ball playing with Jackie all the time, and also that's one of the places I first met Tom Kubis.
Okay.
Because the leader of the band was a soprano sax player, Jack Martin, who was phenomenal with it, and he went through a couple of illnesses, for a length of time. And one time Tom was the sub for that, and another time it was Rick Fay. So it was Tom and I talk about that a lot. Well, I had moved up to Hollywood, and I'd been living in Laguna Beach. I decided I wanted to go to Hollywood, and because I wanted to branch out more. And I started doing rehearsal bands and stuff. And I also went to Los Angeles City College, and I decided I'd go through their music program because I had so many holes in mine, because I kept on dropping out of school and not paying attention to what I should have done. And I did well with that. I concentrated. So that was good. But I did that all working full time.
Uh-huh.
And from there, it ended up where I had left Disneyland, and I decided to go back and get my degree, which I finally did at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And I went down there because they had an electronic music and recording emphasis, and Bachelor of Arts in Music with that. And I thought, and a couple of friends of mine were teaching at USC, and they said, why don't you come there? But I knew I'd be kind of competitive. I knew I'd get into. I didn't want to get into a program that deeply, playing wise.
Sure.
I wanted to get my other education out of the way, which I did. Pretty soon after that, I had a daughter that was born. She was born in 1982, and I worked enough in LA where her birth was taken over by their medical program. That was good, but I got dropped from that because I had been working more in Orange County, and I had to make a decision. Right at that time, there became an opening in the Disneyland Band, and I took it because I figured I had the responsibility of my child, and I really couldn't pass that up. Of course, like everybody else there, I said, I'll do this for 6 months or a year, and that'll be it.
It's such a good gig.
Well, you're there, and frankly, what happens, and it's the good or bad with it, you're working all the time, but you're not playing with other contacts as much as you did.
Right.
I try to keep that up, but it's hard. It's hard to do, and so that's that.
No, I understand. But I have a question for you that you may or may not know, but would you happen to know the original list of the personnel at the Disney Band? The original?
No, I don't. But my friend Tim Rubottom, a trumpet player, started putting, because we had a fellow by the name of Warren Gale, a trumpet player.
Right. I knew Warren, and I knew a few of those guys, Eddie Erickson and
Robbie.
Yeah.
So so Tim started trying to figure out who did what when, and all down through the years. I don't know how far he got with that, but that would be a good source.
Yeah, I know Tim. I didn't realize he was doing that.
Yeah, but he's not doing it now.
Right.
That's for sure. He was a great lead trumpet player too.
Yeah, we ran into each other at college, but I ran into everybody at college, as you know.
Yeah.
I got thrust into that scene in the years of Kubis, which means everybody in town was going through those bands. So,
yeah,
interesting thing.
Great. Were you playing trumpet then?
Yes, I was. Yeah,
good.
I was at Coast in '73 through '73 through '78, Golden West, Orange Coast College. I even played at Harbor City College with Wayne Bergeron. And so I got kind of thrown into the vortex of the cyclone and ended up a tuba player because of the guys I ended up with. I mean, the Paulson brothers, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, our friend Gary that just passed. I went to high school with Gary.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But so I mean, it was hard to be a trumpet player in that era because all those guys are so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. I made my living on tuba. What the heck, you know? Yeah, you get what you get.
And you've done fine with it.
Well, actually, I have done okay.
Yeah.
I have done okay. But I have to admit, this is the first time I've admitted to this on this show. I'm still a trumpet player at heart.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I love tuba and I play it well and I read it well. But something about your first love, you know, I had that Olds Ambassador with a 7C when I started out, and if somebody asked me once if I had my choice of any of the styles and things I've done musically, what would I be doing in the best of all worlds? I'd be sitting in a bar playing 1940s and 30s casuals with a trumpet quintet.
Yeah.
You know,
Now that's yeah.
if I'm going to be honest about it.
Yeah. That's not a bad way.
Yeah, but all of that is why I've become such an unusual tuba player too. Is because
Really?
I started out on trumpet.
Okay. Do you play high on the tuba?
I can. I've got a pretty complete range now, but it was mostly the finger facility that I got from trumpet that really made me different.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But I'm just different all the way around. Yeah, I remember doing a lot of gigs with you, but I only worked with you, of course, as a trombone player because I was the tuba player on those things.
Right.
And I'm not sure I even identified you as a tuba player in my own mind, is what I'm saying, until I started talking to Disney tuba players. You know, we were trying, I think you may have seen it. If you're not on it, there's a great tuba group on Facebook. So all the guys we were talking about Les Benedict and Westy, of course, and all those guys, talking about the tuba players that have been through Disneyland. And wow, what a cast of great tuba players.
Yeah, they really were.
You know,
It's fun. By the way, Westy was the Sonny Helmer when I did that Class 27 show. Westy ended up doing that show.
right.
And he was, as you can imagine, phenomenal in that.
Oh,
I think that, you know, I think he is probably one of the best low brass doublers in the business, period. And with different styles.
yeah.
And I used to contract a wind orchestra, and we had two baritones, Lauren Marsteller and Westy. And there was something with this tremendously complicated thing. And I said, yeah, guys. And Lauren says, no, he did it. Because Westy had that background, you know.
Yeah, his dad was a euphonium player.
Right.
And Wes and I became very, very, very close friends eventually. And so I've heard a lot of the stories about sitting in the basement, taking lessons from his dad. And wow, I mean, Westy is the guy in my brain that made sure that my ego was in check.
Well, there you go. Oh, yeah.
You know, and just a wonderful friend. I wrote a lot of his comedy material for him when he decided he was going to try his hand at stand-up. And so we just became very good friends at that.
Well, good.
So let's talk a little bit more about the band. Now, one of the things I've been trying to get from the guys who I interview that have been in the Disney Band is just some of the stories. You know, I've heard about Eddie Erickson walking past the chicken coop and spinning his trumpet. And I've heard about the quart of oil they dumped underneath Robbie's bike, his motorcycle. I mean, a lot of those are Westy telling me about the cheese sandwich incident with Eddie Erickson.
Well, I don't know the incident, but I know Eddie always brought cheese sandwiches.
Well, I guess when Eddie got ready to retire, Westy made him a little trophy out of lucite that looked like a cheese sandwich. And he had it mounted on a trophy base, and they presented it to him when he retired. But little did he know that they had taken a picture of Eddie coming out of the shower and taped it or pasted it to the bottom of the trophy stand, which Eddie never saw. So he took it home and he put it on his fireplace mantle. And one day his sister picked it up and looked at the bottom. And Wes used to tell that story wonderfully. It just, of course, Ian got on the phone and called the guys, "What did you do?" But
well, Eddie was known. We used to play the retreat ceremony every night, bring the flag down. And he actually sold a trumpet to somebody on the retreat ceremony.
Oh,
it was like the guy.
I'm sorry, Artie. Just to make a clarification to the audience that may not know these guys, Eddie Erickson was a trumpet player, cornet player, banjo player.
Correct.
At Disneyland in the originals, because people always get him confused with Fast Eddie Erickson from the Bay Area.
Right. Yeah.
We're talking about a different Eddie Erickson.
Yeah, very different. But, both totally great guys, Eddie, so a guy like tapped him on the shoulder and asked him something, and Eddie said something, and he says, "Well, is it for sale?" And he says, "I don't know." And they agreed on a price, and then the guy could put the money in Eddie's pocket, and when they left, Eddie just gave him the horn. He marched in without his horn. It was, I might have changed it a little bit, but that's the gist of that story. But there were always practical jokes, the stuff that you can't get away with now. And one of them, there was and this, I wasn't on the band then, but in the early days, there was one saxophone player that as soon as the last note, chord was done, bango, he had a clarinet stand and his tenor stand. He just picked them up and leave right away. So they decided they were going to slow him down. And they one day the Stars and Stripes Forever was being programmed, and you go bum bum bum. Well, every time there was a bump, a guy was back there with a hammer and a nail through his tenor stand. So that got done, and it got done. He went to pick up another note, and he fell all over. So I think that was the stuff that was going on constantly. Ray Templin was part of something where there was a tuba solo on Teddy Bear's Picnic.
Oh, okay.
Tuba, and he was smoking in those days. He got the idea to light the music on fire. And the tuba player, Bob Bernstein, he was looking around because he had it memorized. And he looked down and it started to flame. So they put it out. And for years, that was in the book.
With singe marks on it?
A half-burnt, singed piece of paper. And I don't even think all the melody was there at that point. But that was one of the fun things about the job, and the pranks that were going on. For example, in the band room, like my era of guys, we did a thing we would call sock ball, and we get the socks from wardrobe, and we turn over the couches and we'd hide behind them and throw them at each other, which was got to be. And you know who was a big part of that too? Was Bill Liston.
Oh no!
Yeah. He loved that stuff. His brother didn't think so, but he did. So it was just a great environment because you really did have a lot of fun. You worked hard, but you had fun. Even in my earlier days with that Pearly Band, I just remember that we really had a great time, and I didn't mind working.
Yeah, I had a chance to play with Rick Fay. What another just a great guy to hang out with and get stories from. But now some of those guys actually played the Florida park opening too, right?
Let's see. Well, Stan Freese did.
Well, I think didn't Chuck Anderson play trombone for the Orlando band?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
He took, when I left the Pearly Band, he took my place.
Okay.
And I took his place on Harry James' band. It didn't happen that smoothly, but that's
right.
effectively what happened. Um,
He told me some stories about the James Band too that we won't get into.
no. But Westy was down there as a tuba player in
Okay.
Florida. And Stan Fries was the first leader of that band down there. And then he came up to Disneyland. I met him down there because I'd taken that Class of 27 show to Florida. They wanted to have one in the Horseshoe down there also.
Right.
So I met Stan there, and that was an outrageous band. There was a trombone player named Little Red Blount. Did you ever hear of him?
No. Well, I've heard of him, but I didn't know him.
Yeah, I always heard these stories about what a jerk he was, and then one day I heard a Louis Prima record, and he was on it, and he was a great trombone player. Nobody ever talked about that. They just talked about what a jerk. But they found out he didn't like snakes. So they got all these pictures of snakes and taped them on his locker down there. They do that stuff to a guy.
Yeah, for example, I heard about Steve Sharpie and the fingernail clippers.
Yeah. I think Eddie Erickson was the one that would clip his nails around Steve. Yeah, Steve made the mistake of letting people know what you don't like.
Were you part of that original Pancake House group on Thursdays?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I did go there, but not
I just know that a lot of the original band members met there all the time. I used to run into those guys having breakfast there.
Wow. No. That was Les Benedict introduced me to that place, as a matter of fact.
So just for the audience's sake, there was a standing breakfast get-together with original Disneyland Band guys at a local restaurant in Anaheim. That's still there, actually. The restaurant's, I think it's still there.
It is, and I went by it just about last week.
They closed down.
Oh, okay. My son just informed me that they closed. Oh, anyway.
Oh, in Anaheim?
The Anaheim one, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then he's right.
As far as we know.
The one by me torn down.
So how many people have led the Disneyland Band, have been the band leader?
There was V.C. Walker, who was the first one. Jim Christensen was the second one. And then it was Stan. In between, a fellow by the name of Jim Barngrover led it sublet it, but was never officially the leader. After Stan, there was a fellow by the name of Dave Warble.
Okay, I think I remember. I think that's when I first had the consciousness of who was leading the band. It was when Dave was there.
Yeah. He brought a lot of good things to that. And then Stan came back for just a little bit, and then I took over. And so I did it. I didn't, I don't mean to correct you, but I didn't do it for 31 years. I did it for 21 years.
Okay. Oh, it's 10 years between friends.
I'll take it.
Oh, that 21 years is quite respectable. What was the best thing and what was the worst thing about being the leader?
The best thing about being the leader was you got to hear a great band every day from out front. You weren't on your instrument with that getting in the way. You could just listen to the band. The worst thing was that you're just out there by yourself. You're sitting and playing, make a comment to the guy next to you, and there's another little break, he says something back to you, that kind of stuff, which makes it a lot of fun.
Right, you have to be on all the time for the public.
Yeah, and it was just like an isolated position. I had to learn that I didn't necessarily have to be everybody's best friend, but I just had to have them respect me and the decisions that I make.
That's an important lesson for people who want to lead bands, just in the regular world, that you can't always be surrounded by your friends, or you can't always be everybody's friends. I guess Harry was one of the things that Chuck Anderson told me about Harry James, is he made it a point to be isolated from the guys.
Yeah. Well, Harry was funny. I read the book. Jeff Bunnell gave me that book that I think was Pete Levinson. Was that the guy's name? Wrote on him. Anyways, I read it, and everybody that was interviewed said, yeah, I thought Harry didn't like me and blah, blah, blah. And everybody said the same thing. I thought Harry liked me because I played a song. We were in New Jersey, and it was like a country ballad. And I played it I heard it was kind of a rough, playing it a little rough. And he came up and said, why the hell are you playing it that way? It's a pretty song. Why don't you just play the melody nice, I said, well, Harry, and the band's still playing, and we have this little discussion. So I figured, well, if he's going to do that with me, he'll, he kind of likes what I'm doing or figures I should be around. One Harry story, you never really saw him happy. Once in a while, something would happen. And we were in Brazil, and our book got sent to one town. We went to another town. Now, we had a relatively young band with a lot of new people. And it wasn't like guys that played the book for 10 years and had it memorized. Well, Harry came down to the band room, which he usually wouldn't do, brought a jug, made everybody drink, and says, look, just think of the rhythms. Don't worry about the notes. Just think of the rhythms. And we went out there, and Harry played his stuff, and it sounded like Harry was just a weak band, but it worked. It worked. Another time, Harry was never one for introductions, band introductions or anything like that. He'd say, now we'll do the mole. And that'd be a long one for him. Well, we were in someplace in California. Coincidentally, my father had come out to see us, or he was with me. And Sonny Payne, who was the drummer at the time, didn't show up for the gig. And so Pee Wee Monty says, well, Harry, should I send a car to go get him or something? And Harry says, no. He says, I'll play drums. So he goes back and he plays drums. And he played what I call good, shitty drums. He had all the instincts. He didn't have the mechanical stuff,
right?
But you knew what he was doing. He didn't get you lost or anything like that. It was good. And then after every song, he'd stand up and go down to the mic and talk on the mic. It was like he was a different guy.
Wow.
But he needed, after all those years, he needed something to spark him. Something to kick him in the butt and make him come out of his shell. It was funny. And
wow.
then Sonny.
So I see you're doing a lot of work with Tom and his daughter now.
Yeah, well, not a lot. We did more earlier because places were open.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We started off doing at Clarendon's Jazz Kitchen a group that I named Nicky and the Scoundrels, be a 5-piece group, and Tom would play piano. Tom, myself, and then usually Jimmy Ford and maybe Ernie Nunez. Or Eric Messerschmidt,
Sure.
And that was a ball. And then Tom we got the idea to do it at a restaurant. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with getting the idea. Between Tom and Nicole. Tom, we play off of our iPads, and there's a thing called iPad Pro that has all the songs in it there. He figured a way to get the bass part and the drum part off of that. So then he plays an electronic keyboard. So we've got that. Now at one point we just started laughing because here we are playing with basically a drum machine.
Right. Right.
And
Tom was the whole rhythm section.
Yeah. So anyways, he was the whole thing, and then I play and I sing some songs, and Nicole sings, and it's a ball. I love that group. In fact, I'm learning some new songs now for our Christmas thing. But of course that all dried up.
Oh yeah.
And now we played about 2 weeks ago on the patio of this restaurant there where we had played, and that works out good because we're very separated from everybody, and they keep everybody separated. But
You're also working with Doug. at
Yeah.
at the Jazz Kitchen, right?
Yeah. We did all the Sunday brunches for a couple of years. And also when Doug had broken and messed his arms up, I used Brian O'Rourke, who,
God, Brian's incredible.
I loved him. I mean, he was just, he'd make it, he'd play, want to play a song. He says, well, basically, which arrangement do you want? He'd play like the bassy thing or this other thing. He had it all down.
Yeah, I had a chance to play with Brian. I subbed for Westy with Conrad's band, with Beverly Hills Enlisted. And Brian was on that. Just the shtick he does, other than the fact he's incredibly talented, the shtick he does just cracks me up.
Oh, he's a funny guy. But Doug had, we had done Jerry Van Dyke's a memorial up at Universal. I think it was Universal, maybe not. And getting there, I was driving in and I see a group of people on this, just around this crossing. And I get closer and I see a guy in a white shirt sitting there and with blood in his head. And I get even closer. I said, that's Doug. He was walking down. He was in the totally wrong area. And he was walking down with a coffee and he tripped on the curb and he messed up both his shoulders. So the short story there is he was booking me for the thing at Brennan's. So I said, look at Doug, if you want, I can take that over for you. And when you come back, you can have it back. No, that's what's going to be. So you have a reason to want to practice or at least get better. And he did. So he got better and he came back and I said, well, okay, do you want to start doing that now? He says, no, would you mind keeping on doing it? Because, it was more of a pain in the neck than it's worth sometimes. So, and then we ended up getting all the brunches, which we both loved. It was really a lot of fun. So, and we rehearsed last Wednesday. We get together Wednesdays and we're working on some Christmas songs and we'll come out on my driveway and I'll make an announcement in the neighborhood and we'll play Christmas songs. We did that for Halloween. It was a ball.
Yeah, I had a chance to play with Doug right after he started playing again, and it's always great to hear Doug tell stories. I mean, with that southern accent of his, and he's just telling you, I was walking down the sidewalk, Dan, and I tripped, and rather than spill the coffee, I decided to break my shoulder.
Yeah, but that was about it. He didn't want to spill the coffee.
Well, all right, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this interview. Is there anything else you want to mention or plug? Have you got anything for sale online?
I have nothing to plug. And I have a trombone album that I did with that Tom wrote the charts for with Dave Ryan, Francisco Torres, and my son. And we just rotated the parts, and there's basically 3 there. There was a really good rhythm section. Brian Atkinson plays some vibes on it. Doug plays a little banjo on one song.
Yeah.
And that's on SoundCloud. It's called Old School.
Okay.
Because it's kind of old school playing,
It's available somewhere for people to listen to?
I believe on SoundCloud. And I think it might be on Spotify. I'm terrible at that.
How's it labeled, do you know?
No, it's not. There's no label. It's under Tom or myself.
Okay.
Tom Art Dragon, Old School.
Well, okay. That should get us there. Right.
Well, hopefully.
Well, I hope I hope all of us get a chance to play again and get out and entertain like we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't think the beard looks too bad.
I owe you one. I owe you one, Dan. Hey, I do have a plug though to everybody out there. Those that aren't musicians, a lot of guys are struggling and trying to post things, and you can tip them and this and that. But please support those guys because they're trying to do it. And anytime you get a chance, just go see live music. whenever that happens. It's being there. It's not the money there. It's just basically being there.
Right.
And then for the musicians, we all have to learn exactly what you're doing here, Dan. How to do this stuff, how to utilize it, how to monetize it, because it's going to be a big part of our lives as we go along.
Like it or not, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then good for you. Good for you for doing this.
Oh, thank you. Another thing I just want to tag on to the general fan is well, we get fed from audiences as far as the joy that comes from them, and the just having people who listen to what you do far outweighs any kind of monetary value that we get from our performances. I don't think a lot of non-musicians understand that it's a feedback from the audience that feeds us. And I talk more emotionally than anything.
Yeah,
So,
you're true.
And so this kind of situation we're in is not only starving us from food on the tables for our families, but it's starving us as people and the emotions that we use. So
yeah, very well said. You're right.
Okay, Art. Well, thank you, sir. I'm so happy you agreed to do this, and I hope that we end up on a stage someday together again.
Same here.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.